Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today I'm very honoured to have a special guest. His name is Dan Weinberger. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on the channel today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Brad. I'm excited to be here, actually.
So guys, if you're not sure and familiar with Dan, he's actually the CEO of a very important network called the Morpheus Network. And we're going to unpack that, we're going to understand it, we're going to explore it today, and Dan's going to be the man to do that. So thank you, Dan. Dan, if you could just tell us a bit about your background. We're fascinated by the network, but it's always led by someone with a lot of experience.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, my background actually led me perfectly towards this automated supply chain solution that we're building here. So, for over 15 years, I've been involved in global trade. I've been an importer-exporter for over 15 years, primarily dealing with China, the United States, Mexico, India, parts of Europe as well, even Australia. Maybe
Of
somewhere near
course.
you as well. So, and through my experience, and the job became sort of natural. Where if I know a shipment is going to China, if a shipment's going to India, or if it's coming into the States or wherever it's going, I kind of myself knew how the documentation had to be put together, right? How I send the funds off, right? Throughout this whole process, though, I noticed that my automated steps in my own actions,
Hmm.
should be automated by some sort of greater technological power. And once I discovered blockchain technology and smart contracts and the power of blockchain, I've realized that using myself as this automated system to fill out documentation is definitely not the best way to go.
Hmm.
And my knowledge and experience being able to put it into this system, people can take advantage of all the compliances that I've dealt with and make it as a simple automated process within their own global trade business.
Right, and Dan, that leads us perfectly in as a segue into the key topic, and that is the network itself. So the Morpheus network, with your experience, essentially,
Mhm.
what is it in a nutshell in terms of
Okay.
what it is and why it's important?
Definitely. Okay. What we're looking to do, right, is optimize the global trade industry, right? In order to optimize global trade, the supply chain, it's such a massive, field. It covers every single possible thing that you can import or export. Basically, what we've done is broken down the inefficiencies within the supply chain and created sort of automated steps which drive your own global trade business in order to accomplish every objective you need to complete a transaction properly. So
Okay.
we can get into that detail, of course, and break down the smart contracts as well. So,
Yes, I mean, we
uh,
will for sure. But let's just focus on the slogan. I think that's important because
yes.
it couples so well with your experience. It explains on your website, on your white papers, that you are a full-service global automated supply chain platform. So let's
Mhm.
just talk about that in the context also of your specific training, and your specific experience in that space from examples, from real-world examples of companies that you've worked with as well.
Yes, definitely. I could give you a very simple example. That there's very complex business structures out there that this platform is more than capable of handling. But just to kind of simplify, give you one sort of case that can happen, basically. So scenario.
Okay.
We have suppliers in China and India, and we have distributors in the United States and Australia, right? So one of our back end ERP system, which is connected to our distributors in, let's say, the United States for this example, their inventory is read through their ERP system.
Right.
When their ERP system ticks down to a low level, basically, but they need more product, our automated system, which is already predetermined what the pricing would be with that distributor, generates a work contract with our supplier overseas. That work contract is generated automated. It's automated, of course.
Hmm.
It's a digital original copy of a work contract, which spells out the entire transaction that's going to happen with that supplier overseas. And as well, there's also a work contract distributed to the distributor, sorry, I should say, in the United States as well. So you have these shipments coming in from one place and going out to another place, and it's all automated through this system.
Right.
So we have this work contract generated for the manufacturer. The next automated step, to get them working would be a payment, right? A lot of times payments are 30% up front and then 70% following the manufacturing. So we are automating not only the inventory showing low, we're automating the contract generation, all with predetermined terms, of course.
Hmm.
The third step, the first payment to get them working, automated as well. Now, once they're finished the completion of the manufacturing or whatever it is they're creating that they have it in stock, we would have a container loaded as well, right? Shipment has to happen as well. So within our consortium, which we can talk about later as
Yes.
well, we can layer in a shipment basically, which will be handled fully by customs brokers, freight forwarders, and the container company as well to get that product where it has to go, basically.
Right, and obviously, just to interject there for a moment, if
Sure.
someone was going to lead this as a CEO, they would need that experience of that supply industry, the supply chain industry in its centralized model. So have you had that experience?
Yes, definitely. For over 15 years, obviously, I have been dealing with, global trade, right? So I've been dealing with centralized systems the entire time when it comes to banking and, basically deficiencies we found in global trade is what led me to find a solution, right? And the solution is this blockchain-based, automated system. I can talk about those deficiencies right now, actually, if you don't mind. So,
Absolutely. And also,
yeah.
in that respect, Dan, given the context of, particularly at the moment with the market changes, we've seen some serious volatility of late, particularly in the last few days. It's interesting to hear you say, with your experience, that you can perceive the blockchain and its decentralized model to be something of value for the future of this industry. Why is that?
Well, basically, the way it works now, it's a sort of a process that you have to trust your global trade partner, right? When it comes to a new supplier in China, you don't necessarily know what they're going to provide you, the quality they're going to provide you, whether they're just going to take your funds and you'll never see it again. You're kind of trusting that something's going to happen on that end. When it comes to a decentralized model where everyone's a part of this network, they're all working together, a contract cannot be generated unless the company that is wanting to purchase the product has the value within that network as well to create the contract. It's very, very simple to start with, right?
Right.
Our feedback system as well, the way it works, it's not subjective, whether someone liked the way they converse with someone or whatever, it's not subjective at all. It goes by successful, steps with objectives in a smart contract. So if you, have 10,000 smart contracts that went through perfectly with no problems at all, they will be all within your feedback. And it's not a subjective, rating of 1 to 5. It's basically yes, it was successful, or no, it wasn't successful. If it wasn't successful, they will show the reason it wasn't successful as well. So we're sort of, eliminating any sort of trust as an issue within the global trade industry, which is completely revolutionary. At this moment, there's lots of fraud going on when companies are sending money overseas. That obviously is our end goal, is creating this entire global trade ecosystem that is not based on trust whatsoever.
Right, so obviously you're also circumventing some of the problems that we currently see. So let's talk about that. In terms of centralized models of supply chain provisions, how is the current infrastructure in place with its centralized structure, and what essentially are you going to provide as a solution to those problems?
I can give you an example from my own personal experience when it comes to dealing, for example, with my Chinese suppliers. I'm in Canada. I love everything about Canada, but the toughest thing about transacting with a company in China is they don't want my Canadian dollars, and they, even if they get U.S. dollars from me, they want to convert those to their Chinese RMB as well.
Of course.
On every single transaction, I'm going through a conversion of Canadian to U.S. funds, sending U.S. across the world, which takes a long time as well. It's a whole different, ballpark there. And then there's conversion from U.S. to Chinese RMB as well. So I'm hitting a double conversion on every single purchase, losing up to 10% of my gross revenue just on my purchases alone, right there. That's just on the conversion.
That's significant. That's huge, actually.
It's huge. And when we're talking global trade, we're talking over $15 trillion industry. And if we're talking up to 10% just on the conversion alone, we're not talking bank fees. We're not talking the delays it takes to get the money across,
right,
slowing the entire supply chain. We're not talking any of that stuff as well. We're talking over $1 trillion a year just the conversion rates that the banks are pulling off just by forcing us to convert it to in order to use each other's currencies, when in fact in a blockchain-based model you can eliminate conversion altogether.
That in itself proves that we're moving ahead from the current controls that the banks have for these kind of supply chain systems, and that's why it's going to be interesting to unpack this with you today and talk about your role in conjunction with banks. But if we could move on and talk about the tech itself just a moment. Now,
sure.
Obviously, there's a permission aspect, as as I've read through in your white paper. What is the key fundamentals in terms of if you could isolate 3 aspects of the blockchain itself in terms of technology? What really is the standout points for you for choosing it? Some examples I've written are things like efficiency, cost effectiveness, and again, essentially attractiveness to enterprise if it's done right. But what would you argue are the 3 key features?
For our platform itself, there's the obvious advantages of blockchain models when it comes to an immutable ledger. That is in itself unbelievable. But for our model specifically, comes to taking advantage of that payment system. Once again, we're talking the trillions of dollars, right? There's, as you mentioned as well, the permission system as well. Let me explain to you a little bit of how that works within our system, right? There's a lot of documentation that goes within global trade when it comes to the work contracts themselves, but there's also a lot of shipping documentation. Every country has their own documents that they need for compliance in order to get shipment through. So basically, when you have all these different hands that have to handle documentation nowadays in traditional global trade, you actually have paper documents that you're carrying around to all these different places. It has to be original documentation. It goes from one country to another, slows down the entire supply chain as well, right? What we're very excited about is, we're incorporating a permission system as well into this, is having the documents generated by our platform, digital and original at the same time. So it can be accessed across the supply chain by all these different, hands that have to handle it. And basically when it comes to something like a work contract, which spells out the terms and, basically more information that's than needed, basically when it comes to a customs broker doesn't have to know the terms that you paid your supplier.
Right.
So basically they would have, those sensitive documents, they would not have access to them. They'd have, permission to access just to the customs broker documents, which would be the bill of lading, commercial invoice, packing list, insurance documents.
So I guess that's one key feature, is accessibility and universality of those documents. So that's one key feature. What's the next two?
Being able to share it, being able to store it as well, right? I think that's one big key kind of feature together. Documents can't get lost as well.
Right.
I also would incorporate obviously the payment system as well as a key feature that led us to blockchain and be able to transfer funds from one place to another, avoiding obviously those conversion rates, extra bank fees, and obviously the slowdowns as well. Also the third major feature within blockchain is actually this technology we're using called layering. It's a layering technology. It allows us to take advantage of other blockchain and non-blockchain technologies as well, layering it in within our smart contracts.
Right.
I can give you an example of that as well. For example, let's take FedEx, for example. They have an amazing tracking system. They've developed it over many, many years, right? We have an open API system, which basically takes their tracking system and layers it as a part of our smart contract, where something as simple as a tracking notification of a delivery would actually trigger the next objective in a smart contract. So you can actually have a FedEx package delivered, and then an escrow payment, a payment that was sent beforehand but held in escrow, will not be released until the package is actually delivered. So that is what I find is revolutionary, being able to take advantage of other technologies and automating them within a smart contract.
Right, and we're going to be talking about that layering technology as well, Dan, because that is quite fundamental to your plan. What is interesting also is that companies like FedEx, as one example, which is arguably one of the top companies in this sort of centralized space, those companies essentially could build their own blockchains. That's certainly doable. And what you're suggesting is that you can also integrate these kind of these capabilities and these companies into your design through its layering system.
Yeah, definitely. We know there are massive companies working on their own blockchain-based systems within supply chain.
Right.
IBM and Maersk are developing an amazing system with Hyperledger. This track and trace system they're developing is, it's cutting edge. It's unbelievable. And we're extremely excited to use that technology within our smart contracts. They are not automating a business like we are automating a business, generating these work contracts and using payments automated to drive your own business. So we will use their technology, once obviously it's tested and proven and works well within our smart contracts, working together as sort of an alliance in global trade in order to, make this ecosystem of, a trustless ecosystem possible.
Right, well, that's interesting also, because you mentioned the key word of alliance. Dan, can you tell us, I've read about an alliance that you've also forged at the moment, a very key one, in fact, specific to your industry.
Yes, definitely. We recently just joined the BETA, which is the Blockchain in Transport Alliance. Basically, it's a group of members, involved in supply chain, kind of banding together in order to create this ecosystem that works together, in order to get shipments across, in order to communicate across the world, using each other's technologies and abilities, in order to sort of drive the global supply chain to where it should be.
Right.
Members besides the Morpheus Network, of course, are FedEx, UPS, Bridgestone as well. So we're extremely excited to work with all these major players in global trade, and we're excited to use all these different technology that they've built up within our smart contracts. So
And I think, and also, Dan, sorry to interrupt, but to be associated with those kinds of companies, I mean, we aren't talking small scale. So clearly, you're thinking the bigger picture. You're clearly trying to be a player in the, the serious space of supply chain provisions and companies themselves. So I guess the thing to look at now, I suppose, is unpacking the connections between centralized and decentralized models. And the reason why I want to broach this with you is because you have a facet in your design of being permissioned, meaning that essentially it's a closed database-like design where it has controls. Let's talk about trust. Let's talk about centralization.
Definitely. As I mentioned before, there is the centralized banking system, which is involved in global trade heavily right now. When it comes to international trade, you can't necessarily tell your suppliers in China, we're going to switch over to a blockchain-based marketplace, and I'm going to pay you with a cryptocurrency starting today. Going forth, that's how we're going to do business. That your supplier would say, "I'm sorry, we have a model where we need to get paid as a wire transfer." So we understand that, and our end goal is obviously, as I mentioned, to create this global trade ecosystem without trust being an issue. Now, involving the centralized banks. Where the information, sort of like the funds contained in bank accounts, that can't be a part of the ecosystem. People don't want to reveal that information, obviously, and centralized banking kind of gives you that advantage as well. Now, we understand that, like I mentioned, that our suppliers won't move over to our system, from day one. But we've actually integrated with Swift, which allows us to actually bridge the gap between the traditional banking world and our new, blockchain-based ecosystem as well.
And Dan, just to interrupt for those listeners who may not know about Swift, and that's a very significant connection that you've made, a partnership there. Can you tell us a bit about Swift, what they do, and specifically why that relationship is so key?
This is why it's so key. We see other technologies out there are sort of integrating with individual banks. I believe Ripple has partnership with a couple different banks out there, and it's a model that they're going with. But Swift, what they've done over the years, connected with over 1,600 banks globally. They're already in 200 countries. Through the Swift hub, we have the ability to send a payment to over 200 countries around the world. So people can use our automated system, take their cryptocurrency, and send a payment to their supplier. The supplier will receive it exactly as a wire transfer is received, deposited directly into the bank accounts, thanks to our connection to Swift. And
so they're fundamental to your automation, essentially, globally.
They are at this stage for sure. Just based on the the space of global trade as it is now, needing to involve a centralized banking system in order to pay your suppliers, that will be an automated step within our smart contracts as well.
Right,
sure.
And Dan, if just to play devil's advocate, obviously for the listeners who understand blockchain, what is the plan for the moving from that centralized structure into a decentralized model in the context of Swift as well, in what the role they play?
Now, their role, bridges the gap from us to these traditional banks, as I mentioned. When it comes to our global ecosystem, based on a blockchain, payment system, as well as our automated system, fully on blockchain. To be honest, we won't be using a Swift transfer. Swift connects us to the centralized banks.
Right.
So once we do bridge that gap, and people understand, they're not. There's a lot of fear when it comes to moving over to a blockchain-based model, and once that we overcome that fear with the general public, that bridge that we create, the general public will walk across that bridge, and then we technically don't need the bridge anymore once everybody's part of the ecosystem. So we are very excited to incorporate Swift into our model, and we feel that they will transition as well as the world transitions into a blockchain-based system. But in all honesty, once we do transition to our sort of ecosystem with trust as no issue, we won't be able to necessarily incorporate the centralized bank system as well.
And then also you're utilizing Stellar. I noticed it's also advertised in your website. That's fundamental also to this progression into the decentralized blockchain environment. So what's the connection with Stellar specifically?
Now, Stellar, their technology is unbelievable. We're super excited to be a
It is.
payment processing partner with Stellar. It really is. So
Mm.
we have multiple payment flows. Global trade. We don't want to restrict any sort of country around the world. So we are using obviously Swift to get into over 200 countries, but Stellar gives us that extra advantage to avoid any of these crazy conversions that we're going through the banking system. The speed of Stellar, the costs involved are close to nil. So you can send payments. I'm my
Quite
heart rate's
amazing.
increasing. I'm getting excited thinking of sending a payment from from my bank in Canada. When I'm saying that, I mean from my obviously
Yes.
Morpheus Network system to overseas to China in milliseconds for pennies. It's just unbelievable to me. So we're super excited to be working with Swift. With Swift and with Stellar, of course.
Right.
And their technology is definitely an integral part to our payment process. We have multiple flows which incorporate Stellar, using their anchors, also using them within our crypto-based system as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
And Dan, let's talk about the user for a moment, because obviously they're paramount to the whole ecosystem, because they're the user, they're going to utilize the service. So we talked about Stellar, we talked about the key point of its efficiency, but also of its cost effectiveness. It's quite essentially quite cheap for a company to use. But if in terms of user, how is that beneficial for them?
The user themselves, basically what we're trying to do is create the most intuitive, easy to use platform that we can create, right? So we're not trying to complicate it when it comes to when we have these payment flows. We literally have 5 different flows where your money can go in different ways in order to get to that final spot. None of that stuff will be kind of visual on the platform when you're using it. We're just going to give you the most efficient, cheapest way to transfer your money, in the form that you need to transfer it. If you need to transfer it as a fiat payment, we'll give you that flow as well. If we won't necessarily have to spell out all the technical aspects of it. We do want it to be kind of user friendly as well, obviously.
Sure. And obviously, going back to Stellar, it's quite an economical, blockchain design. It's a very exciting and economical financial conduit for companies like yourself. And that's where, again, it benefits the user, I'd imagine, because it reduces costs.
Oh yes, definitely. As I mentioned before, the cost of conversion in the trillions, also the speed. People don't figure in how long a money transfer or delays in documentation to inefficiencies we're definitely tackling with our system costs the global GDP. The World Forum did a report actually where they estimated just the inefficiencies. So we're not talking about conversion rates or anything like that. Inefficiencies cost the global supply chain 5 to 15% in growth. 5 to 15% of a $15 trillion industry. We're talking trillions of dollars.
Right.
Money that's should be created, that's the size of the entire oil industry, is lost because of inefficiencies in sending documents around or waiting for a wire transfer to happen. So it's they're very simple sort of problems that we have in today's world of the import-export business, and we're tackling it head on, and we're super excited to eliminate that as an issue.
Yeah, and obviously it's a privilege to talk to you about that as you're spearheading that. Dan, in the context of the West, because obviously I've seen some examples in China, there's some clear leaders in terms of supply chain developments in the blockchain. But in the West, would you argue that you're one of the, if not the leader for, promoting this kind of layering technology, this kind of plan to really go global with supply chain?
Do you know what? I think that kind of excites us, that we're one of the, I feel like we're the only blockchain-based system that's incorporating all these different aspects of global trade that these other amazing companies out there, you have, for example, ShipChain, I'll bring up. They have a transportation-based blockchain system. It's a great project. I love their project, and I'm excited to incorporate all these different techs within our layered smart contracts as well. So
right.
I feel like being a part of this beta alliance as well allows us to bring all our members together, put these technologies together in order to really optimize global trade. We're not necessarily after being the only company out there that's involved in global trade, and we're going to handle every shipment. And, no, we know that it takes a whole network of companies to make this happen. But I feel like the Morpheus Network is the company that's going to bring the companies together and allow companies to use these technologies technologies within their actual businesses.
Right, and the sheer fact alone that you're titled a network itself suggests that you are, really supportive, and you complement well all these different projects that can essentially be utilised through Morpheus systems, which is fascinating. If we can talk a little bit more about some of the technologies as well, specifically one called Winjet. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Winjet actually is our blockchain development partner. They've been amazing when it comes to developing this system. Winjet actually won an award in 2017. I just want to say it properly. It's the BW Digital Leaderships and the CIO Award for the best IoT implementation. We're super excited to be working with Winjet. We actually have 15 blockchain developers working on our project right now.
Right.
They have actually 25 blockchain environment implementations that it's successfully completed, and our MVP is looking amazing. We're looking, our roadmap is definitely on schedule, and we're going to continue pushing forward with Winjet really leading us when it comes to this development. They're really an amazing.
Well, I have to say, when I did look through all the different experiences, the partner links, there's quite a robust number of companies that are already associated with Morpheus Network. In terms of future partners as well, Dan, are you planning on connecting with other companies in the near future and
Yes.
extending the connections?
Yes, definitely. That's kind of our motivation for joining the Beta Alliance to start with as well, right? Having connections to FedEx and UPS and all these conglomerates in the global trade industry is amazing to start with. We also have a whole group of companies that are volunteering. We say volunteering, but they're actually getting token to be used. Test out our system. It's during our testing phase. It's going to happen this year, but it's real world transactions that are going to happen. So we're actually using our payment processing system. We're not able at this state to completely automate these businesses. We're actually breaking down the smart contracts and those objectives to test them out one by one. So we have a whole group of companies that are going to be testing out the system later on this year, and they're going to be our initial users of the system as well.
Right.
Companies around the world that we're very excited to be working with.
That's awesome. So essentially this year the focus is on bringing it to the fore, bringing it to the public, testing the utility through real world companies, real world businesses, and then obviously you're very excited from that point forth in being implemented and functional.
Exactly. And then once we globally launch in first quarter of 2019, we're going to be past that testing phase. It's going to be basically a smooth process when it comes to generating the documents. This technology is already there. We're just trying to fine tune it in a sense. And our MVP, when it's released, people are going to be you're going to ask, why don't you just globally launch this? This system should be used right now. And there are a lot of obviously compliance and regulations that we have to go through to make sure that the system itself is running perfectly. And global trade, it's we're not talking about microtransactions. This system is not designed to be used to purchase a set of headphones or gym shoes or anything like that at all. This is for major import-export transactions, containers, 10 containers, 100 containers worth transfers, and that's how we're designing the system to work.
Right, and then just in terms of value, obviously you're an expert in this industry. Just how valuable is it in terms of the trillions of dollars? And also, if we could possibly talk about KYC, we could talk about ensuring that the process from the user right through to the endpoint is covered with some sort of security and also data storage. So if we talk about KYC, data storage, and also just how big the market is.
Definitely. No, that's I love the multifaceted question there for sure. Now, when it comes to, the first part of that, you mentioned the KYC.
Yeah, we're looking at the mechanisms of storage as well. Like how are you going to store data, this as well in the process?
Exactly. So that actually goes in with our layering technology as well. Once again, there's great technologies out there. For example, storage is one technology that we're definitely testing with. Aecon as well. Basically, when it comes to generating these documents, there's other proofs in the supply chain as well. Some companies will demand picture evidence of manufacturing, right? So that is something that we can provide as well within the system as an objective within the smart contract.
Right.
where a company can provide pictures and have it stored off our blockchain, let's say on a storage-based system, but that would actually be hashed on our blockchain as an objective within our smart contract as well.
Right.
So we are implementing, data storage sort of off our chain as well, recognizing that at this stage we won't be able to store mass amounts of data that these companies sort of like ship chain when it comes to setting up trucking as well. Storage is sort of evolutionized data storage as well. So
and I think that's important also because it frees up the computational space of the blockchain, and it allows you to be fully focused on what you need to do. If we could talk about though KYC, obviously users, again focusing on them, how is that redressed?
Yes, we're definitely have the most stringent, KYC testing. Basically, there's a lot of pushback nowadays when it comes to regulation in blockchain. Now, there shouldn't be any pushback. Regulation is the best thing possible for blockchain technology. This is going to benefit everybody in the long run. The people who are pushing back against regulation, I'm not really sure what their reasons are for not wanting to be regulated in a sense. But our system itself is going to provide, sort of the level of regulation which you can trust that the company you're dealing with is 100% not laundering money through the system, is not just using blockchain technology for negative reasons, and we're trying to drive global trade to benefit the planet and not in the opposite sense.
Right. So clearly, Dan, you're going to be linking with companies that specifically provide for that trust.
Exactly. And there's some amazing companies out there that are doing actually blockchain-based KYC, sort of testing as well, which is amazing. They're diving into the network of information that they can get through blockchain, as well as other technologies too, and getting all this information definitely could be a layered part of our smart contracts as well.
Right.
Our initial onset is to use the same stringent KYC testing that Canadian national banks are using. I'm in Canada. I have relations to Canadian banks, and I'm using the same level of testing that we're using Canadian banks for companies first onsetting onto the platform.
Right, and then obviously you're also complying with international laws, with your own national laws. You'll be pursuing that. No doubt you have provisions in your own system to make sure that you understand them and you're following along with the guidelines.
Yes, most definitely. And to be honest, when it comes to compliance within banking regulations, our connection to SWIFT, because they already have this connection to all these banks, definitely gives us the leg up to get these payments off. That's definitely going to be not an issue when it comes to the launch of the platform, making a swift transfer. When it comes to compliance in the banking system, they have that sort of built in, and we have the best customs brokers within our team as well, in the world, which can make sure all the compliances when it comes to customs, importation, all that's followed to a T as well.
Right. So Dan, if we talk about that final point of the overall market value in terms of trillions of dollars, can we talk about that? And also just to raise the point you mentioned, it was very interesting about sort of pushing the point that there really is a necessity for the use of not just permission but also identity built into the blockchain. And the reason why I broached that is because we've seen from the outset that initially the premise for blockchain itself was to circumvent authority, to circumvent essentially even enterprises themselves. But the reason why I broached the money aspect right now is because you are essentially planning on being an enterprise. You're planning on being a business. You're planning on being a viable entity in a very global business framework. So in that respect, money is a fundamental, but the other part that's fundamental is recognizing that in my opinion, no company is going to touch a company that doesn't have some sort of mechanism built into it whereby there is a degree of identity, trust, and permission.
Yes, especially as you mentioned, the trillions of dollars that are involved in global trade. When people see a system that is pushing an industry that's $15 trillion, when it comes to KYC, that is absolutely essential because laundering money, cyber terrorism, all the other aspects that people, aspects of blockchain technology that are now unregulated that people kind of take advantage of. We're trying to move that whole thought process, out of the equation basically by having that full KYC testing and regulating every single user of our system. So when people talk, I definitely had conversations with personal friends who are, sort of dabbling now in blockchain and getting, sort of more knowledge and,
Yes.
understanding the system. And, it's a slow process apparently. Some people dive right into it and other people need some time, in order to really, you sort of get in the know of what the technology is about. And taking advantage of technology is going to be a huge benefit for the planet, and none of that benefit has to do with non-regulated activity.
Right.
We need regulated activity in global trade in order to create this global ecosystem where trust is not an issue. Trust is definitely not. Yes.
So in that relation, in that context, how big is the industry itself? Clearly you've made it really clear that it's about the decentralization of business in the context of it being identified for the user. There's traceability aspects that are relevant, but just how big is it in terms of dollar value?
Now, the dollar value of the global trade industry is over $15 trillion. That is massive, $15 trillion industry. Now, the sad part about it is that it should be a lot larger. And that's not to do with, let's say, the banking. It's the delays within the system. We are slowing down the supply chain where we can't grow past this $15 trillion barrier. Eliminating these inefficiencies within the supply chain is going to push this $15 trillion, 16, 17, 18, 19 trillion dollars. We're going to see over the next 5-10 years that global trade is going to explode as we're able to automate all these different systems and inefficiencies are taken out of the equation.
So Dan, how do you ensure that you are leading the way? How are you leading the pack? Is it your team? Is it your unique layering technology? How is it that you are going to be at the forefront?
Yeah, I definitely feel it's our team that's super motivated. We actually brought on Roger Crook, who's the former CEO of DHL Global. Myself as well, since I've been in this industry for the majority of my life. We're super excited about this, and our passion is going to push us through to keep on, sort of improving our system, keeping up with what's, current, all the new technologies that are coming out. And once again, we're not trying to, like you said, we're trying, being a leader in this industry, but we're not trying to eliminate all the other technologies out there. We realize it has to be a network of technologies working together.
Right.
So we're, in a sense, we're part of this Beta Alliance that is going to revolutionize how transport is sort of undertaken by working together. It's global trade cannot happen with one company. It has to happen between two people, just from a basic standpoint. And our platform is trying to incorporate all these businesses around the world together in order to benefit everybody as a whole.
Right, and what's interesting about you, Dan, also with your team is that, and your project, you're clearly not focused on what we would say in the market is FOMO. The fear of missing out, the hype of the market also that underpins that FOMO. You're really about a quality project that's longitudinal, that has a far-reaching plan and design. But just how far-reaching is it for you?
Well, you know what? The blockchain technology right now is really at the forefront. We're just getting to the tip of the iceberg, right? So and the capacity of our platform to handle transactions all around the world is definitely there. So as blockchain tech sort of grows and becomes sort of fundamental to run your business, our platform is going to grow along with that, automating all these businesses one by one. And at the end of the, I can't necessarily say that our business is going to take over a $15 trillion industry and process every payment through our platform, but I could say that we'd have the capability to do it, and we would optimize global trade and also increase the GDP by a substantial percentage in the trillions of dollars.
Right, and obviously you're planning on going global, so you'll have no doubt different points throughout the globe where people will become to know Morpheus Network as well. Is that your vision, is that you do have offices in different places?
Yes, definitely. As it is right now, we're marketing heavily in Russia, in Japan. We have our connections in China, in the United States as well. Basically, what we're doing now is we're distributing the token. We have a token sale coming up, and basically our token is going to be distributed to the actual companies that are going to use our platform. The utility of the token is a value-based utility in our platform, but it also grants you access to all the automation features of the platform as well. So we're super excited about getting these companies that are approaching us right now about how do we get in, how do we get involved, and we have to tell them, we're distributing this token, and once the global launch happens, it's as simple as logging in, putting in your KYC information, and next thing you know, we're helping you through your first trade, so you can automate the rest of them after that.
Right. So Dan, let's talk about that with the token distribution plan, the ICO coming up. Clearly, that's not far away. So let's talk about dates, and also how does that help with the lay user? How can they be involved in this really exciting project?
Exactly. Now, the token sale itself, the pre-sale begins on February 23rd of this year, of course, 2018.
Right.
And the token sale model, we looked at different models when it came to structuring this platform, and the token sale just works perfectly for what we're doing. We're trying to distribute the token, to the people in the world who can contribute to our platform, get the token to use it within the platform, right? So they're contributors, but they also have a token which they're going to use as a utility to use the platform as well. So we're trying to get our own users within the platform by distributing this token out there. So we're super excited about that.
Right. So again, what was the date for that? It was February the 23rd?
February 23rd, that's right.
Right. In terms of roadmap, finally, Dan, just on the last point of the Q1, Q2, Q3, what are some of the key points you want to really hit in terms of this year, or key components of your plan?
Yes, the first key component, obviously, we're going to have this token sale beginning in the next couple weeks, right? But the next, roadmap objective, to use a smart contract term,
right.
It would be the release of our MVP as well, which we're very confident is going to happen during the token sale as well. Now, once the MVP is released, people can sort of touch and play with the system, but then the real work when it comes to the testing phase as well. So that's when our system is going to be used by our strategic partners to actually run real world transactions and send these sort of payments, testing out our different flows of systems to different countries around the world, and having our partners sort of send these payments back and forth in order to smoothly get the system working for our global launch in Q1 2019. The testing also involves obviously the digital document generation, as well as all those layering capabilities as well. And we're hoping that a lot of the technologies that we're excited to use will sort of finish off their projects as well, and we can use them safely within our smart contracts too.
So just on that note as well, let's talk about that time distinction between now and 2019. For those who are probably wondering, if they're considering investment in the company, or they're just interested in the sheer design of the supply chain, why is that such a long period of time between now and 2019 for those people? Obviously, in crypto, it's a very long time, but what's the reasoning for it?
The reasoning for it is just to basically develop a product that's actually going to work smoothly and properly. We actually discussed having an MVP sort of like thrown together, and this really watered down version of the platform, and it's not what we're about. We're trying to build a quality product over here, and when it comes to these compliances around the world and dealing with all the different documentation possible, to launch a global product, and get all these compliances working properly, it will take some time. The development process takes time as well, and all the compliances take time as well. So we plan on doing this properly. We're not planning on having a global launch of a platform that's not going to work. So that is our utmost sort of objective, is to have a functioning platform that's going to revolutionize global trade. And Widget as our technological partner for developing is definitely setting us in the right direction to do that.
Right. So clearly you're about trying to have a quality project. You're about functionality first and foremost, as opposed to rushing it to suit the market.
Exactly. That's where I come from, right? Like I'm involved in global trade. That's been my business for over 15 years. So to be honest, this automation platform, if nobody in the world uses it and only my company uses it, I'm still benefiting from it, right? That's a very selfish perspective, and it's not our goal whatsoever. But for me to use the platform, it would be a huge boon for my business alone. And globally launching this, giving that advantage to everybody, is really what our goal is. So
Dan, if we wanted to find out more about your exciting Morpheus Network project, how can we do that? What's the easiest modes of exploring it?
I think the best way to do it is just to go to our website, morpheus.network. Definitely subscribe to our newsletter, read our white paper. Our white paper, we try to keep it sort of understandable, I guess, to anybody. When it comes to global trade, we want people to understand all the different steps and the inefficiencies it takes to run inefficiencies in today's traditional processes, and what we're doing to revolutionize what's done basically in global trade today.
Right.
So I would say read our white paper definitely, and sign up to our newsletter, because we have some blockbuster announcements that will be coming out in the next few weeks as well. So
Okay, so that sounds exciting. It sounds like there's a lot more than we don't. Big
You almost got
announcements.
out of me. You almost got out of me right there.
Big
But
announcements. That sounds good.
yes.
To be honest, Dan, it's been an absolute privilege talking to you. I've learned a great deal, and hopefully the listeners have as well. It's something that's not that well known yet, the Morpheus Network. I'm sure it's going to be. Supply chain networks are very prominent right now. There's some serious players in the space. I'm sure you're going to be one. Dan, it's been a privilege once again on behalf of all the people who are trying to follow crypto, blockchain excellence. It's been real. It's been great.
Oh, Brad, thank you so much. It's been all my pleasure, really. I'm a fan of yours, so it's kind of surreal to be having a conversation with you as well about about my platform. So thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Hopefully we can talk again.
Yes, no, hopefully, definitely, we'll be talking again. So.